With what felt like an eternity, Matt Reeves has finally completed the script for The Batman Part 2. The film is still set to be released on October 1st, 2027, as of the time of this recording. With The Batman being a cinematic masterpiece and a huge success, it's only right to assume that the sequel will be on par or even better than the first. Having that first look at Robert Pattinson nailing a picture-perfect Year Zero Batman, I can only wait to see what Matt Reeves has in store for Part 2. I think Reeves' take on the boots on the ground Batman is actually a perfect representation of Batman in the early years. Taking one of his more underrated villains, the Riddler, and making him a true force to be reckoned with was genius. With the first movie, we explored Gotham through the eyes of Batman and his first years at tackling the corruption of Gotham as he uncovers the truth about his city. Following this, I think the sequel will dive more into Bruce Wayne, and will try to take a shot at showing Gotham through Bruce Wayne's eyes this time around, as that surface was barely scratched. Integrating a new mask, so to say, will be adamant in displaying the world in multiple perspectives, and will reveal the lies behind Gotham. With this assumption, I want to take a look at some possible villains that I think would be perfect for the Batman Part 2. Following the boots on the ground premise, we know that Reeves is avoiding any fantastical villains. This comes after a lot of headlines around Clayface being the main villain, which were debunked by James Gunn. Going off of this, let's take a look at some of Batman's more fantastical villains who most likely will not make it to this film. Another hulking figure, similar to Clayface, that is a repeat offender in Batman's history, is Killer Croc. Waylon Jones was born with a rare genetic condition which caused him to appear more reptilian as he grew to develop animalistic tendencies. With the ending of The Batman, we see Gotham flooded, which could make room for a crocodile-like villain, but it is a little too fantastical to count. Going back to Clayface, that moniker has been adopted time and time again by multiple different people, and having someone use shape-shifting abilities would fit a more fantastical route with less focus on world building and plot. Speaking of superhuman abilities, another superpowered villain of Batman is Poison Ivy. Originally Pamela Isley, a botanist who is subject to experiments by her professor, causing her to transform to the Poison Ivy we all know and love today. Following the previous two villains I mentioned, Ivy would be difficult to adapt and again focus too much on the fantastical side of Batman, taking the attention away from Gotham and its corruption. Finally, the last fantastical villain I want to bring up is none other than Mr. Freeze. Even with the teases of the movie taking place during the winter, right after the events of the Penguin TV show, I am unsure of Mr. Freeze's part in this movie. Victor Freeze is another character with an adaptable story, one where he's trying to save his wife, and a freak lab accident turns him into Mr. Freeze. This one is most likely out of all the previous fantastical villains to come to the movie. I could see him being adapted as addressing corruption amongst Gotham's elites and their power over hospitals, insurance, and whatnot, therefore causing him to seek his own cure for his wife where the doctors and hospitals wouldn't, as they are not funded for research of such diseases. But, yet again, I see Mr. Freeze as just a tad bit too fantastical for this movie, and I think we have more to explore before diving deep into that sort of lore. To knock out some more villains that would likely not appear in the sequel, I want to address ones we have already gotten in the past in Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy. Starting us off, I want to talk about Scarecrow. He's someone I feel could be adapted greatly in the sequel, especially seeing the Riddler and the Joker in Arkham Asylum. He could be shown as a psychiatrist doing experiments on the inmates. However, we've already seen him get played by Cillian Murphy, and, like Clayface, James Gunn already came out and said Scarecrow will not be in this film. Another villain we've seen done is Two-Face, who fits the theme of corruption while also maintaining the boots on the ground storytelling. Harvey Dent, being the district attorney of Gotham, was always after the corruption of the city. So, once he actually becomes Two-Face, his whole world turns upside down and he becomes a criminal mastermind of Gotham's underworld. The next villain we've seen that I think would not make it to this movie is Bane. Although we do get some sort of hint at him with the serum Batman uses in his fight against the Riddler army, that is not exactly the same venom steroid that Bane uses. Regardless, I don't see him fitting anywhere in this movie, and it would be a little too early to represent him in such a big way. And finally, I've got Ra's al Ghul in the League of Shadows. Ra's al Ghul is a prominent Batman villain in the comics, but he is way too large of a figure to throw into the sequel of the franchise with the amount of world building needed to get done for a chance at this character. I think this one, without a doubt, will not make it to the final film. Enough about villains that I don't think will make it to the movie, let's start talking about some potential villains that have a chance at being in this film. These all have not been done before in live action, and all follow the boots on the ground theme. I think the first on the list is most similar to the Riddler, that being Cluemaster. Arthur Brown could not only play a similar role to exposing the elites of Gotham as the Riddler, but he could set up Stephanie Brown as Batgirl for this franchise in the future if Matt Reeves decides to go that route. Another villain that's somewhat similar to Cluemaster is Mad Hatter. He could play a role of using technology and hypnosis to control people to do his bidding. Although that is sort of a stretch with what we've seen, I would love to see Reeves take a shot at these small-time villains even if they are a bit too obscure. If we want a more direct approach to control, let's take a stab at Professor Pig. He has no superpowers and instead kidnaps people to turn them into what he calls Dollatrons. His main goal is to reach a state of perfection and could be seen as a serial killer for lobotomizing his victims. To wrap up the potential villains, I've got none other than the crime lord himself, Black Mask. Now that Carmine Falcone is dead and Oz has taken over the criminal underworld of Gotham, there is a chance for new faces like Black Mask to emerge from the dark and challenge his throne. All of these characters, I think, have potential to be in the next movie with Matt Reeves' writing masterclass, but I still think they all fall short in one small way. Even though they are small characters who can be written to perfection and represented eloquently, each has their shortcomings as to why I do not believe they will be in this movie. Cluemaster is too similar to the Riddler and would be a repetitive villain when we want this story to progress further. Mad Hatter does not care about the corruption as much as he wants to control others and manipulate them himself. Professor Pig is only obsessed with the idea of perfection and therefore mutilates his victim, again, not really advancing the story. And although Black Mask has a direct hatred for Bruce Wayne, he offers nothing to improve on the storytelling of this saga. The Penguin already does what Black Mask aspires to do, but better. There would be no point in introducing another crime lord to rival and overthrow the Penguin when he just got into power. The whole series promoted and displayed how ruthless and conniving the Penguin is, so to throw all that away with all the buildup makes no sense. Overall, even with the great potential of these characters, I still believe they will not show up as villains in this movie. Following the footsteps of the first film, I want to set the stage for multiple villains. Reeves was able to conjure up a tale by chronologically establishing each criminal to construct the lore of Gotham in his image. He did so by setting the stage full of suspense with the Riddler, proclaiming the provocative performance of the Penguin, created a charming narrative with Catwoman, and fabricated a fall guy fallacy with Carmine Falcone. Once each of these characters were introduced, the movie did a complete 180 at the peak, going back in order for each villain to end off with the Riddler, the one who started it all. I want to do something similar, by first starting where we left off at the end of the Penguin TV show. Here, the bat signal lights up the night sky of Gotham. This is reminiscent of the beginning of the first movie, but instead of the train gang, we are met with one Victor Zsasz, a serial killer whose MO is carving a tally into his skin for every kill he makes. Zsasz escapes from the notorious Arkham Asylum, and GCPD is put on high alert with Commissioner Gordon putting the bat signal out to call Batman for help. We then pan to a snowy Gotham, where Zsasz has a hostage situation aiming to get his next kill. We are then introduced to Batman once again, fresh off of the Gotham flooding and facing off with the Riddler. Batman was the one to put Victor Zsasz in Arkham the first time, but he quickly notices that something isn't right. Zsasz is faster, stronger, and he looks almost inhuman. Batman gets there in the nick of time before Zsasz can kill his target. While Batman closes the distance, the hostage gets away, and we get a closer look at Zsasz, who seems to be much more maniacal, almost animalistic in a way. Zsasz, who was once a scrawny psycho, was now a hulking figure. Batman's instincts were right. It seemed as though there had been experiments done on Zsasz during his time at Arkham. A fight breaks loose between the two, with Zsasz quickly taking the upper hand. Batman does end up breaking free, but before the two clash again, we see Zsasz die from none other than a sword cutting off his head. Batman looks up to see a shadowy, hooded figure holding the sword. Before Batman has time to react, the man grapples to the rooftops, clearly taking inspiration from Batman himself, a kind of copycat if you will. GCPD soon reaches the alley in which they were fighting, only to see Batman on the ground with the beheaded Victor Zsasz. Instinctively, Batman grapples up in pursuit of his doppelganger. We are then given a clean sight of this new vigilante, as Batman and him have a standoff. This wannabe, with his own cape and cowl, seems to be more knight-like, even rocking a red cross over his armor. The strange man taunts Batman, seeing himself as the true protector of Gotham, ending the evil in the city. He preaches about God and how the Order of Saint Dumas has sent him to replace the Batman. he finally introduces himself as none other than Azrael. Before Batman can confront Azrael, he jumps off a rooftop and disappears. Not only does Batman have to deal with an imposter, he will be the one held accountable for Victor Zsasz's death. We see Batman retire to the Batcave, revisiting the footage of his encounters with both Zsasz and Azrael. After coming to the conclusion that Zsasz was experimented on to make him into this thing, he decides to pay a visit to Arkham Asylum, hoping to get some answers. Here, Batman finds the lead psychiatrist, who just so happens to be the warden, Dr. Hugo Strange. Surprisingly, Strange is happy to see the Batman and is open to having a sit-down conversation with him within Arkham. Although he denies all claims of any experiments going on, he is still suspiciously eager to get to know Batman. Before he leaves, Strange says that he expects to be seeing him again. After Batman leaves, he decides to return as Bruce Wayne, since he believes he will have more influence over the asylum and decides to fund the institution. Upon meeting with Strange, he insists on Bruce doing an interview with him, as it is rare for the doctor to do any diagnosis on non-patients, especially the famous Bruce Wayne, whose parents were murdered before him. They talk a lot about the Arkhams, specifically Bruce's own mother, Martha, whose full name was revealed to be Martha Arkham in the previous film. They then dive deep into his childhood trauma, and although Bruce tries his best to deflect the interrogation, Strange comes out victorious in this mental battle. Strange then says that he didn't expect he to come back so soon. Confused, Bruce explains that this is the first time he's been to Arkham. Strange then clarifies he was talking about the real, true person behind the mask he has put on. Strange was more interested and intrigued to speak to the Batman one-on-one, which he seemingly did as both Bruce and Batman are the same person. He then calms Bruce down, explaining how he does not want to expose the face behind Batman, but rather seeks to understand him and his psyche, how the Batman came to be, and how Bruce Wayne is a made-up persona to further protect this image. Although there is a sinister look behind Dr. Hugo Strange's smile, he gives Bruce all-inclusive access to everything he needs, and once he finds nothing, Strange allows Bruce to leave, his secret kept safe for the time being. Before he is gone, however, Strange does remind Mr. Wayne that he knows who he is and he too shall know himself soon. Once again, Batman is left confused, as he is left to put the pieces of the puzzle together like the detective he is. Over the course of the film, the focal point is on who the mask truly is, whether it's Batman or Bruce Wayne, showing Bruce more and more through the public eye. As we are dealing with this dilemma, we are introduced to Bruce's childhood friend, Tommy Elliot. Throughout the movie, we see Tommy become a more prominent figure in Bruce's life, and as the tensions start to rise, everything lines up for Tommy to become none other than the infamous Hush. He has been working with Dr. Hugo Strange behind the scenes, who has filled his heart with resentment and jealousy, again looking back on Bruce's past, predominantly focusing on Thomas Wayne, the man who saved Elliot's parents from their death, a death that he himself planned in order to inherit their massive fortune. Tommy saw Bruce as lucky, having a lavish lifestyle with all the wealth and not a care in the world. He wanted to replace Bruce in real life. So, he works with Strange to take over Bruce's life while giving Batman a hard time. Tommy exposes Strange for doing experiments on the patients at Arkham, and we soon come to find out that Tommy himself has been enhanced, now looking identical to Bruce Wayne. We find ourselves with a double doppelganger dilemma, with Bruce Wayne dealing with Tommy Elliot and Batman dealing with Azrael, both of whom aspire to replace him. Both his worlds come crashing down, with Wayne Enterprises falling into the hands of Elliot and the GCPD putting out headlines of Batman who is now a wanted criminal. In a slick turn of events, Batman decides to confront Elliot, prompting Azrael to come out and challenge him. However, this is all his plan to reveal both of these imposters. First showing Azrael that this pseudo-Bruce Wayne is in fact Thomas Elliot, revealing his true self to Azrael and uncovering his identity as the real Bruce Wayne. Elliot and Wayne get into a deadly altercation, with Bruce being at the hands of death. He calls out to Jean-Paul Valley, Azrael's true identity, and exposes the Order of Saint Dumas for a cult using him as their tool in the name of religion. Azrael is given the choice to save Bruce by either killing Elliot in the same fashion as Victor Zsasz, or going against his ways and following Batman's code. He chooses to save Bruce and follow Batman, overcoming his inner turmoil between his own persona predicament. Azrael comes to terms with the truth and goes against the Order. The two take Elliot into custody, with Azrael giving himself over as the vigilante, therefore clearing Batman's name. Bruce Wayne then goes in with the full force of the GCPD to take over Arkham, owning it outright and making Dr. Hugo Strange an inmate of his own prison. This comes after he used Elliot to expose Strange for his experiments on the patients. Batman is now one step closer to dealing with the corruption of Gotham, and now intends on doing so along with his alternate identity, Bruce Wayne, thus setting the stage for the final chapter of Matt Reeves' The Batman Trilogy. Some of you may be confused as to why I didn't mention the Penguin, Catwoman, Robin, and even the Court of Owls. To start off with the Penguin, I believe he will still play some small role in the movie, but not as big as the first film. He did just come off of his TV show, so the build-up to his reign of Gotham's criminal underworld can still be explored. Although Catwoman did leave to Bloodhaven, we can't forget about the fact that Sofia Gigante and Selina Kyle were revealed to be half-sisters. Knowing this, the Batman sequel can go in a completely different direction, focusing on building these relationships even further. But I still want to shift perspectives and call attention to new and underappreciated villains that I think Matt Reeves can utilize and overall uplift with his unique approach to character development within the lore of this Batman universe. That being said, Reeves' heavy emphasis on the corruption of Gotham leads me to believe that the Court of Owls will be teased within this film, and will be the final boss of the last chapter for the trilogy. The Court is not just one person, but a secret society of elite individuals who have immense influence over Gotham. This would make sense to bring in once they realize how big of a threat Batman truly is, and I think they deserve the spotlight as the main villain group to end off the trilogy. That can work seamlessly with the general plot idea I had, as well as leaving doors open to integrate more villains and include previous ones like the Penguin and Catwoman. Especially if we are going to see a relationship dynamic between Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle. Now, the glaring choice to not include Robin was mainly because I don't think he would fit well within the storyline. I am, of course, talking about Dick Grayson. Now, there have been some talks of Talia al Ghul and introducing Damian Wayne, but I think that just pushes everything in a whole different direction. Giving that much creative freedom to skip over the importance of each preceding Robin from Dick to Jason and then Tim before bringing in Damian is just too risky. Each of the Robins played a significant part in shaping Batman. By just rushing in with Damian, where Batman has no father-son experience whatsoever, is the wrong move to make in my eyes. In reality, there's only room for one Robin, and since this Batman is so young, Dick makes the most sense. I could see this happening, however, with the movie mainly focusing on building the narrative around Bruce Wayne, having him attend the Flying Graysons circus event and seeing Dick's parents be murdered right in front of his eyes. Thus, reminding Bruce of himself and seeing a way to save this child from what he had to endure throughout his life. Therefore, adopting him and then building off from there until we see a fully fledged Robin. But the way I see the story going, and especially with the Court of Owls, Robin would need a ton more experience than he can gain within this film alone. And I think the only way to justify keeping him is to make a very large time skip, allowing room for Dick to become Nightwing for the third movie. This would also make room for both Jason and Tim, or leaving them out entirely and bringing in Damian Wayne with a much wiser, more experienced Batman. Overall, the choice to not include these characters was deliberate. From leaving in the Penguin and Catwoman with even smaller roles, to saving the Court of Owls for the finale, and even overlooking the thought of Robin altogether. This is a Batman movie, and although each of these characters are fundamental in developing Batman's character, it would be very hard to do so within a few films. Choosing to focus on the obscurities behind the Caped Crusader will show how Matt Reeves decides to shape this universe. To make sure I cover all my bases, let's not forget about the Riddler and the deleted scene we saw, giving us a sneak peek at Barry Keoghan's Joker. To keep things short, I think the Riddler's arc has come to an end. He tested our Year Zero Batman and has helped to build the detective we all know and love. The damage the Riddler did has been done, and although there is so much more for Batman to uncover and improve on, the Riddler has no more hand in that development. We saw how menacing Matt Reeves can make even the most neglected villains, and I think it's time he does it once again with someone else. But I would still love to see a scene where the Riddler is taunting Batman in the background of Arkham Asylum, a small cameo to acknowledge the previous movie. Now, we all saw the infamous secret scene, which gives us a first look at the Joker in Matt Reeves' Batman universe. Since I do want to put a heavy emphasis on Arkham Asylum, there is a fair shot we see him once again, but at the end of the movie or in a secret scene just like the first film. This could even be by introducing Harley Quinn, a psychiatrist who has fallen in love with the Joker during her time interviewing and understanding him at Arkham. She then plans an escape for the two of them, thus leading into his fully fleshed out inception within the final film. Now that would be one hell of a finale, introducing Batman's greatest villain of all in the last chapter of the Batman trilogy. There you have it, my take on a picture-perfect plot for the Batman Part 2, where we see Gotham across multiple perspectives through the eyes of both Batman and Bruce Wayne. We see him deal with two imposters trying to replace both of his identities while still uncovering the corruption that lies behind Gotham. I hope you enjoyed my take on underutilized yet iconic characters, from executing Victor Zsasz to the introduction of Azrael, the betrayal of Tommy Elliot as Hush, and taking a look at the psyche of the sinister Dr. Hugo Strange. I hope I didn't get your hopes up with my thoughts on characters from the previous entry into the franchise with the Penguin, Catwoman, and the Riddler. Although I did leave out some important figures in relation to Batman like Robin and the Joker, I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments about my take for Matt Reeves' The Batman Part 2, which would directly lead into the final entry of the trilogy with the Court of Owls. And with that, thank you all for watching.